actually potentially saving you thousands of dollars. So let's go ahead and jump in. Most of you have already heard of the Student Money Management Center, so just my brief little spill about that. Please come see us. We are a service that you pay for as a student here at CM Houston. So not only just these workshops and other programs that we put on, but we can sit down with you one-on-one. Tonight, I'm going to be speaking in very general terms, but I would love to sit down with you one-on-one and help you get a game plan for paying back your student loans, because your numbers are going to be different than the examples that we look at tonight. And there's a lot of programs that you potentially qualify for that could change a lot of things in your situation. So please, please, please come see me or any of our student employees or student coaches in the center that can help sit down with you and get a game plan for this. Okay, just so I can get an idea of who's in the room. Any freshmen? A few, okay. Sophomores? Juniors? And where are my seniors at? All right, what about grad students? A few of you? Okay, good deal. So, seniors, put your hands back up. Keep your hand up if you are graduating this semester. All right, I see a couple. All right, let's go ahead and just give them a round of applause. Congratulations. Okay, so I want you guys to be thinking about the cost associated with actual graduation. I'm not even talking about repaying your student loan. I'm talking about graduation. It can get pretty pricey. So, first expense related to actually graduating. Depends on the board. You actually have to apply to graduate. Did y'all know that? Yeah. You actually have to pay money to Sam Houston State University to say, hey, I'm ready to graduate and walk the stage. Okay? You typically get about a week, 2 weeks at the beginning of that very last semester to submit that application. And it's going to be $40. Okay? For this semester, it was before September 7th. They're still going to let you apply, they're still going to let you graduate, they're still going to let you walk the stage if you miss that deadline, but they're going to charge you more for it, okay? So as you guys get closer and closer to your semester of graduation, let's try to meet that deadline and avoid having to spend the extra $20 to apply late, okay? What else do you have to have for graduation? Cap and gown, exactly. So cap and gown can get pretty expensive. Sam Houston has a pretty basic black regalia, has the cap, has the orange soles. You can get it at the bookstore for a lovely $60 plus another $35 for the stole, or you can borrow it from a friend who just graduated the semester before you, and that's going to save you that money, right? Okay, so think about that. Also, things I want you to consider: graduation announcements, graduation pictures, graduation party, graduation trip, diploma frames, things like that. Is that really necessary? As far as announcements, if you buy them from campus, they're going to be super expensive. Look at online invitations, look at printing your own invitations and sending them out for your parties. Look at potentially photographers who are maybe friends that could use the money, to take your pictures and not paying a professional photographer. So again, I just want you guys to be thinking about, it's not just repaying your loans that we're talking about tonight, it's also the expenses of actually graduating and walking the stage, okay? Next, who knew that Sam Houston offered a tuition rebate? Okay, very few of you. Okay, so I want everybody to listen, because this is something that potentially all of you can maybe get, okay? Sam Houston has a $1,000 tuition rebate. A rebate basically means you fill out this paper, you turn it in, and they're going to give you $1,000 if you meet the qualifications. You have to apply for it your last semester here at Sam Houston, and it's due to the registrar's office by 5 p.m. on the last Friday of the semester. It's $1,000. If you already have student loans, they're going to put that $1,000 directly towards your loans. If you don't have student loans, they're going to cut you a check for $1,000. Okay? But what requirements do we have to meet to actually get this? Pretty basic, but I want you to be aware of them, especially my freshmen and sophomores in the room. There's some things you have to do to make sure you get this. Number one, most of us are going to be good on, you have to be enrolled for the first time in an institution of higher education in the state of Texas after 1997. Well, a lot of you probably weren't even born until then or after, okay? So most of us can go ahead and put a check mark there, okay? Number two, you must be receiving a baccalaureate degree from a Texas public Sam Houston is a Texas public university. You can put your check mark there. 3, you must be a resident of Texas and paying resident tuition at all times. Do I have any out-of-state students in here? Any out-of-state? All right, so again, everybody can put a check mark next to that. Last, this is the one that gets everybody. You can have no more than 3 credit hours in excess of your degree plan. Most of you in here will probably be on a degree plan that's about 120 credit hours, right? Does that sound about right? This means at graduation, you can have no more than 123 credit hours, okay? If you're not sure if you meet that requirement, if you think it's borderline, fill out the form anyway. You should have that form in your packet. You literally put your name, date, sign it, date it, and turn it into the registrar's office. It is so simple to fill out, and the worst thing that they can do is say no, right? So if you're not sure, fill it out and submit it anyway. Any questions about the tuition rebate form? Y'all good? Everybody gonna fill that out? All right. Now I'm gonna talk a little bit about the different types of student loans. Most students at Sam Houston, actually about 70% of students at Sam Houston, use some type of financial aid to help pay for school. And one of those types of financial aid are student loans, which is really one of the main reasons we're here tonight, is to talk about how do we pay these back, how do we deal with this. So most of the time we're talking about direct student loans, basically through the Department of Education. 2 different types, subsidized, unsubsidized, and then we're going to talk about plus a little later on. Who can tell me what's the difference in subsidized and unsubsidized? Yes? Correct. Did everybody get that? Yes. Okay, so if we're taking out student loans, we want to make sure that we're utilizing those subsidized loans first, because overall, it's less expensive because there's no interest accruing while you're in school. Now, the next type of loan that most people have are the plus loans, okay? And those are available to parents of undergraduate students or graduate students. Those do have a little bit higher interest rates, so again, we want to utilize our subsidized and unsubsidized first, then we would utilize our parent plus loans or our graduate plus loans. There's also a couple of loans called FFEL loans and Perkins loans. These are actually loans that are no longer being awarded, okay? So most of you in here probably don't actually have FFEL loans or Perkins loans. FFEL loans were actually private loans that were awarded to students but backed by the federal government, okay? Like I said, it is possible that maybe some of you juniors and seniors might have those, but most everyone else won't, okay? So most of our conversation today is going to focus on the direct and the plus loans. Okay, I wanted to give y'all a little bit of a timeline about what we're talking about when it comes to student loan repayment. So we first thing on our timeline, the first day of your last semester of school, okay? We've already talked about you gotta apply for graduation, submit that application and pay that fee. Also, between your first day of the last semester and graduation, you need to complete loan exit counseling. Does everybody know what loan exit counseling is? Somebody want to share? Tell the group? Yeah.
Basically, they kind of scare you into saying, hey, you need to repay, and here's a possible payment plan.
Yeah, so Ruby just said basically they scare you into, starting to do research on paying your student loans. And that is kind of what it is. It's basically an overview of your options for repayment. And that, again, guys, you're going to be required to do that. If you don't do it, they're not going to mail out your diploma. Okay, so you're going to have to do it if you have student loans. If you need help with that, who can y'all come talk to? Exactly, because like I said, a lot of it can be really confusing. And that's what we're here for. We're here to kind of help break it down and give you tips and tricks on this whole process. So as you need help with that, come see us. Now, between graduation and actually having to pay your loans, you've got a 6-month grace period, okay? So technically, you do not have to make your student loan payments for those first 6 months after graduating. Now, keep in mind, during that time period, interest is going to continue to accrue. So if you are able to make payments during that time period, it is to your benefit in the long run. It's going to help you prevent paying so much in the long run on your student loans. But the federal government does give you that grace period so that you can find a job, get into the workforce, get your feet under you before you have to start making those payments, okay? Now, right before your grace period is up, we recommend that you make a final decision on which payment plan you're going to be on. And we're actually going to talk about those payment plans tonight. Okay, payment plans. I like to group payment plans into two different groups, okay? I have our payment plans listed that I would say are probably the most common payment plans for students. Standard repayment plan, obviously, graduated, extended fixed, extended graduated. Those are what I would say are the common payment plans. Then we have what we call income-driven repayment plans. Pay-as-you-earn, revised pay-as-you-earn, income-based repayment, income contingent repayment, and income-sensitive. Tonight, I'm really only going to focus on our payment plans over there to the left, and then pay-as-you-earn and income-based repayment. But again, I want you guys to know there are more options than just the details we're going to talk about tonight. So come see me so that we can look at all of your options specifically. Okay, the most popular payment plan, standard repayment plan. 10-year payment plan, and you make the exact same payment every month for a 10-year period. At the end of this 10-year period, your loans are paid off and your interest is paid off, okay? This is typically the cheapest payment plan in the long run. Now, you'll probably be paying more per month, but you're paying less in interest overall, which is what makes it cheaper in the long run. Now we have the graduated payment plan. This is also a 10-year payment plan, but your monthly payments are going to increase over that 10-year period. So you may start out at $50 a month for years 1 and 2, but then year in 3 and 4, it's going to go up, 5 and 6, up, 7 and 8, up, year 9 and 10, up. So from a budgeting perspective, this can be really difficult to deal with. Now the thought process behind this payment plan is that you're just starting your career. As you grow in your career, you get those promotions, you get bonuses, you're going to be able to afford more and more and more throughout that 10-year period. But like I said, from a budgeting standpoint, it's a little difficult to work with, and you're paying less up front during those years where your payments are smaller, which, do y'all know what that means? More interest in the long run. So it's a little bit more expensive than the standard payment plan we just talked about. Now, extended fixed, very similar to the standard payment plan, except it's a 25-year repayment period. So again, your payments are going to be the exact same amount every month for that 25-year period, but they're going to be a little lower in the amount than what it is on the standard. So again, as we keep talking about these, we're getting more and more expensive because you're paying more and more interest, okay? Graduated extended. Again, very, very similar to the extended, except this is a 25-year period. So this is actually the most expensive of the payment plans, okay? Because you're putting off a lot of the interest in these last few years. So in the long run, you're paying more, okay? Any questions about these 4 payment plans? Okay, now I want us to move on to the factors in income-driven repayment plans. The 4 payment plans we talked about previously, they are strictly based on the amount of loans you have and your interest rates. That's it. That's what those payment plans are based on, okay? The factors in the income-driven repayment plans, they're looking at your income, your debt. Also, if you're married and you file taxes jointly, they're looking at your spouse's income and debt. They're looking at family size, and they're looking at the types of loans. So those factors, along with how much you have in student loans, that's what goes into determining how much these payments are going to be per month, okay? So I do want to point out, we're going to talk about this later on, that income-driven repayment plans are required for public service loan forgiveness programs. okay? So when we talk about that, I want you to be thinking about these income-driven plans, okay? The other thing I want you guys to realize, I do not recommend these income-driven repayment plans typically unless you're doing public service loan forgiveness, because these income-driven plans, if you're not pairing it with some type of forgiveness program, are going to be extremely expensive, okay? Like very, very, very expensive. Now, after 20 years, if you're on one of these plans and you haven't paid off your student loans, you can have that remaining debt forgiven, but you have to pay income tax on that. So most of the time, students are not able to afford the income tax that they are charged for that forgiven amount of debt. So again, I just want to caution you as we move forward and talk about these income-driven repayment plans. I really only recommend this in some extreme circumstances and if you're doing a forgiveness program, which I promise we'll talk about. Okay, so really at Sam Houston, I see 2 of these income-driven payment plans that most of our students qualify for. So I'm only going to talk about those 2, okay? The first is pay-as-you-earn. So you have to have a pretty high debt relative to your income, okay? So they're looking to see how much do you make versus how much debt do you have as far as student loans, okay? Also, they're going to be making your payments about 10% of your discretionary income. And do y'all know what discretionary income is? Kind of, yeah. So it's the income that you have after taxes and things like that. So it's basically the income that you get to decide where is it going. Also, with these income-driven repayment plans, they want to look at your income every year. That means you have to submit documentation every year so that they can see how much you're making. Because if you start out making $25,000 a year, your payments are probably going to be lower than if you're making $40,000 a year. So every year you have to submit new documentation to show them that information. These payment periods are 20 years. And like I said, after that 20-year period, they will discharge your debt, but you have to pay income tax on that. So that's a big, warning. Okay, income-based. Really the big difference with this is that they're looking at your family size on this one, and that you can go up to 15% of your discretionary income, okay? So again, earlier before we talked about, it's strictly based on how much you have in student loans and your interest rate. With these, they're looking at your income, family size, and other factors. All right, how many of you have heard of consolidation? I see a few hands. Okay, so as a student, let's say you start freshman year and you take out subsidized loan and unsubsidized, okay? That's technically 2 different loans freshman year, okay? Then you go on to sophomore year and you take out subsidized and unsubsidized. All right, well, if we have 2 from freshman year, 2 from sophomore year, now we technically have 4 loans. Let's say we do 2 more junior year, 2 more senior year. We technically have 8 different loans, okay? Now, most of the time those loans will be with the same company, but they are technically separate individual loans, okay? Now, I have seen situations where they're not with the same company. You may have 1 loan over here and 7 loans over here with another company. What consolidation does is it takes all of those individual loans, lumps it together in one lump sum with one interest rate, okay? So instead of having to make potentially a payment over here and 7 payments over here, you're dealing with one company making 1 payment with 1 interest rate, okay? Now, the other thing I want you to think about are what are potentially the downfalls of this, okay? Because everything has pros and cons. So if you consolidate your loans on the standard and the graduated repayment plans, we talked about those being 10 years. Well, if you consolidate, you can stretch that to a 30-year period. But I caution you, if you do that, what are you going to be doing? Paying more in interest. Exactly. So that's something I want you to be aware of. Yes, it's something you can do, but is that the smartest decision for you financially? All right, the other thing, if you have loans that have certain benefits and certain perks, and you consolidate them, could potentially withdraw those perks to that loan. So it's something I would encourage you to talk to the Student Money Management Center about before you do it, because we want to make sure you're holding on to all the perks of the loans that you do have, okay? And once consolidated, you can't unconsolidate. It's a done deal, okay? Now, a few warnings and advice. Do not allow your loans to default. We're going to talk about preventing default later. Does anyone know what default is? Yeah.
You can't pay them, so you just receive it on bankruptcy.
Well, yeah, so you're talking about bankruptcy, but defaulting, you stop making your payments, okay? You don't immediately go into default, okay? It does take a little bit of time, but it's something that can negatively affect you in so many areas, and we'll talk about that later. So please, please, please do everything you can to avoid default. And there are programs in place that we will talk about to help you avoid default. Also want you guys to consider signing up for automatic payments, okay? This can save you a little bit of money as far as your interest rate. A lot of times if you do sign up for automatic payments, it'll give you a 0.25% better interest rate. Now again, I caution you in this because 0.25% it can add up, but if you're someone who never knows how much money is in your bank account and you overdraft your account when this comes out, that 0.25% may not be worth the withdrawal fee, overdraft fee, that you're going to be charged. So you have to be someone who really stays on top of and manages your account for this to be beneficial, okay? And then do not consolidate your federal loans with a third-party lender. I promise you guys will have banks reach out to you and say, oh, let us consolidate your loans, we'll take that over, we have these perks. I promise there are a lot more perks on your federal direct loans than if you consolidate with a third-party lender. Promise, okay? So if that's something you're considering, come talk to us before you do it, and we'll walk you through pros and cons of each, okay? Now, this is the good stuff. This is the money-saving stuff. Loan forgiveness programs. The first one I want to talk about is public service loan forgiveness, okay? This is a very in-depth program, so I really am going to be giving you kind of just an overview. But again, if you have questions and you think you qualify, come see me for more information. Basically, this program is an incentive for students to work in public service areas, okay? It started in 2007. It's a 10-year program. Students that make 120 qualifying payments, who work for qualifying employers and are on qualifying payment plans, potentially can have thousands of dollars forgiven. Thousands. There is no cap on the amount you can have forgiven with this program. So, I've told you all, qualifying employers, qualifying payment plans, so there's a lot of fine print with this program. So I kind of want to walk you through a little bit of that. First thing, what is a qualifying loan? This is one of the reasons I encourage you, don't consolidate with a third-party lender. This is only going to qualify for your federal student loans, okay? So like we talked about, subsidized, unsubsidized, direct consolidated, so you can consolidate, just make sure you're keeping it with federal consolidation companies. FFEL loans also, I don't think many of you have those, but like I said, big perk to keeping your loans with Department of Education servicers. Okay, so what are the qualifying payment plans? Remember earlier, that's when I talked about why I would advise you to do an income-driven repayment plan for this program right here. It's typically one of the only reasons. So, the pay-as-you-earn, revised pay-as-you-earn, and income-based, and income contingent, and standard, all technically qualify. Now, y'all see that I have standard in red and I have it scratched out. Can anybody tell me why? Why would I not advise you to do that program, that payment plan, with this program? Yeah.
The standard plan is 10 years, so you have paid up.
Exactly. Ruby just hit the nail on the head. So remember, the standard payment plan is a 10-year payment plan. You pay that exact same payment every month for 10 years and everything's paid off. Well, if this is a 10-year program and you're doing the standard plan, when you get to the end of the program, you're not going to have any loans to be forgiven. So technically, that is a qualifying payment plan, but if you do that one, you're not going to receive any forgiveness, right? And we want to try to have as much forgiven as possible. So again, that's why we typically advise one of these 4 payment plans for this program. Now, it can only be payments that are made after 2007. Again, most of you qualify for that. On-time payments only, okay? If it is 15 days late, not going to count for this program. You want to make sure you do everything to stay in good standing for this program because it is thousands of dollars on the line, okay? Not to mention, we don't want to start taking the steps toward default. We want to avoid that. Agreed upon monthly installment, so it has to be the full amount. And again, you can't be in a default rehabilitation program, which we'll talk about later, okay? So those are the qualifying plans and payments. Now, you have to be a full-time employee with specific companies. So full-time, that's their definition is working one or more jobs for the greater of an annual average of at least 30 hours per week, or the number of hours the employer considers full-time unless your employment is with 2 or more employees. So the first one, I want you guys to realize there's some professions out there where if you look at the course of a year, they may not be full-time. Anybody think of that? A situation where maybe they don't work?
Interning?
Possibly interning. I'm thinking of something else. What's another profession, very common profession, where you don't work year-round? Teachers, exactly. So that's why they have this clause in here that says for a contractual or employment period of at least 8 months and an average of 30 hours per week. So a teacher is considered full-time, even though they don't technically work full-time all year round, okay, for purposes of this program. So it's got to be full-time employment. Now, what employers are going to qualify? This is where we have to start looking at our options. So any federal, state, local, or tribal government agencies, okay? So anybody in your CJ major? Probably the majority of you know, if you stay in that field, will probably qualify. A public child or family service agency, or a tribal college or university. We can actually look this up. So if you're starting to get job offers from different agencies, organizations, come see us or email me and I'll send you this link and we can look it up to make sure that by working for that company, you'll be getting the advantages of this program. Now the other qualifying groups are nonprofits, okay? So really the key here is that they have that Internal Revenue Code of 501c3, okay? So as long as they have that code with Internal Revenue Service, they qualify as a qualifying employer for public service loan forgiveness. I also want you guys to realize it's not the job that you do for that company that qualifies you. It's the company you work for specifically. Does that make sense? So it doesn't matter if you're the janitor or if you're the CEO. It's the company itself, okay? Not the position you hold within the company. Okay, so these are some examples. I'm just going to go over the first one real quick. So let's say we have a student who has student loan debt of $23,000, okay? They have a 6.8% interest rate, and their starting adjusted gross income is $25,000. On the standard repayment plan, they're going to be paying $265 every single month for a 10-year period. That's 120 payments, okay? So by the time they get done with this, they're going to pay about $8,000, almost $9,000 in interest. Their $23 principal or $23,000 principal amount for a total of $31,762. So that's what they're paying total to have borrowed that $23,000. Okay? So if they're doing They're not going to have any forgiveness. Now, let's say exact same scenario, but they meet all of the qualifications for public service loan forgiveness, and they're on the income-based repayment plan. We're going to be paying, most of our money actually is going to go toward interest. Very little will go toward principal balance. So the total amount they pay is $16,211. They're going to have $22,000 in forgiveness. Do y'all follow that? We're literally talking about thousands of dollars. You're paying back less than what you actually borrowed in this situation. Does that make sense? Do y'all see the impact that that has? Especially over a 10-year period. All right. Now, again, with this program, there's a lot of paperwork. So we talked about you've got to be on those income-driven repayment plans. There's paperwork involved with that every year. Plus, you need to do an employment certification form. This is technically not required, but I recommend it because this is going to be how they keep record of you working for qualifying employers. And therefore, it backs you up at the end of that 10-year period saying, no, you've approved me for this over the last 10 years. Sign my check, okay? So it really does help you out. If you ever need help filling out the employment certification form, we can help you. Now, it's going to have to be signed off by the Human Resources Office at the company or agency you work for. I'll put an example in y'all's packet so you have it. But again, we're happy to help y'all fill this stuff out. Now, any teachers in the house? Wow, not very many. Okay. So I do want to talk to y'all about this real quick. There's also a program for teachers, teacher loan forgiveness. You have to work as a full-time teacher for 5 complete consecutive years to qualify for the program, and it has to be at a low-income school or service agency. Depending on your subject area and whether you're teaching elementary or secondary education is going to determine the amount that you have in forgiveness that you're eligible for. Now, public service loan forgiveness, what was the max? There was not one, exactly. With teacher loan forgiveness, there is going to be a set amount that you can have in forgiveness. For example, elementary school teacher teaching special education, max is $17,500. Secondary school, same, $17,500. Now, an elementary school teacher teaching math, $5,000. But if that teacher teaches secondary math, it's $17,500. Okay? Kind of the same thing here. Science, if it's elementary school, it's only $5,000. If it's secondary, it's $17,500. These are high-need skills right here. That's why at the secondary level, they're eligible for a little bit more than they are at the elementary school level. Now, last example, other subjects also apply or qualify for this program. Now, typically, they're both elementary and secondary capped at $5,000. Now, let's say you're in a situation where you've got, let's just say, $15,000 in student loans, but you're a secondary math teacher. Well, this is a 5-year program, so if you're making your payments for 5 years, waiting for your time to be up, you may have already paid down on some of what you could have had forgiven. In order to not do that and get your full amount of forgiveness, there's a forbearance program that we would recommend that you do in unison with this program. Okay? So again, there's so many technicalities with this. I really encourage y'all to come in and sit down one-on-one for it. Anyone with Teach Grant? If not, I'm going to skip it. Be on time loan. Anybody have that? I'm going to skip it. Okay, so what happens if we have trouble paying our loans? Maybe we haven't gotten a job yet, we've graduated, but we haven't found anything, or things are just tight, we can't afford it. There's a lot of ways to potentially help with that, okay? So we always want to look at the possibility of postponing payments, deferment and forbearance. If you're having trouble, those programs can help prevent going into default. But you need to work with your servicer for that. You can't call them the day that your payment is due and say, hey, I can't pay it. If you let them know, though, in advance, they can work with you on some of these options to help prevent that from happening. Also, possibly changing your due date. Let's say you did get hired and you get paid on the 1st of every month and your payment's not until the 18th. So by the time you get to the 18th, you've spent all your money. Well, why don't we work with our servicer to change our due date closer to the beginning of the month when we have our paycheck, okay? Also, again, reducing your monthly payments. We can potentially do that by changing payment plans. But again, there's going to be pros and cons for doing that. So if you're in that situation, let's talk before you make that decision. Loan consolidation can help, can sometimes give you a better interest rate. And then also, I'd hate to even talk about this. I hope this isn't our situation. Sometimes you can have cancellation or discharge of loans, death, injury, school closures, things like that. But hopefully that's not going to be our case. Now, preventing loan default. So I already talked to you guys about what default is, and now I want you to know why it's so important that we avoid it, okay? So if you decide to go on to graduate school and have some type of professional license, if you go into default, you're potentially going to lose that and not get it back, okay? The other thing, wage garnishment. Do y'all know what that is? Some people do. Ruby, you want to tell them?
They take your money that you're supposed to have and they're going to pull out the money that they need and then
Absolutely. They're going to contact your employer and they're going to say, hey, your employee's not paying their student loans, so you're going to take this much out of their check before you give it to them and give it to us. So that's kind of an embarrassing situation. You probably don't want your employer knowing your business, right? You also don't want them taking money out of your paycheck, so let's try to avoid that. Also, do any of y'all currently get a tax return every year? Some of you from working? Now, ideally, you don't want to owe, and you don't technically want a refund, but a lot of times we do end up getting refunds. You may not have that anymore. They'll just keep it if you're not making your student loan payment, okay? They can also call for acceleration, which is the immediate repayment of all of your student loans, okay? Debt collection fees, loss of eligibility for deferment, loss of options for future loans. So let's say you want to help your kids when they get to school and take out the Parent Plus loan. Not an option if you're in deferment, okay? Now this is, to me, one of the biggest, most impactful reasons to avoid this, your credit. It will severely impact your credit. If you ever want to buy a home, buy a car, if you're not paying cash and you need a home mortgage or you want to finance, probably not going to happen. And if it does, you're going to be paying a heck of an interest rate, okay? So in the long run, this can really have a negative impact. Again, we want to help you prevent this situation, so come see us. Now, if you enter default, there are ways you can get out of it. There's rehabilitation programs. You can do it one time only. After that, it's not going to be an option. You're going to work with your lender to do that, to set up a plan to get back into compliance with them. And then once you're rehabilitated, you do have those options of deferment and forbearance. You won't have any garnishment of wages. That will cease if that's currently happening. And obviously, you won't need a default status. Okay, this has been a lot of information and a very, very broad overview of a lot of things. So what questions do y'all have? Yes?
how early can you start paying your loans back?
You can check how early can you start paying your loans back. So technically, you can pay your loans while you're in school if you want to. You don't have to. So I typically tell students there's kind of three options. Option one, don't make payments while you're in school because you don't have to. Option two, make full payments while you're in school. And then what I typically recommend is a happy medium. If you're taking out unsubsidized loans, which that's the loans that have interest accruing, maybe just pay the interest. You know, because that could be a lot more manageable as a student to pay the interest while you're in school. That way, when you get to graduation, you don't have such a big sum. So technically, the answer, you can start paying whenever you want.